Hey everyone, welcome to the Know Your Numbers module. And this is going to be a look at some of the important metrics in understanding your business health and understanding the finances and how to grow and scale a business with predictability, right? A lot of people in online business, a lot of people in e-commerce, a lot of people in any business really, they have no idea how to understand their numbers or how to really even analyze the health of their business when it comes to their finances and the actual amount of money that they're making. So the two important numbers that we're going to talk about, or metrics that you need to know, are average order value, customer lifetime value. The reason that these are both so important is because this is how you scale a business. When you understand these numbers, it becomes like a math formula to know how much each customer is worth, so you know how much you can spend to acquire a new customer. Right? Because the counterbalance to these two numbers is your customer acquisition cost. This is everything in business, right? Your customer acquisition cost is how much you're spending to acquire a customer. So when you understand your average order value, and more importantly, you understand the customer lifetime value, that's going to let you know how much you can spend in your marketing to go out there and find customers. And when you know these numbers to a certainty, then it becomes a math formula in scaling your business. Let's first talk about average order value and what this is. It's actually very simple, okay? And Shopify calculates this for you right within your dashboard as well on a daily basis. And you can look at this from any time frame that you want, but your average order value is always going to be your total revenue for that given time period divided by the amount of orders taken in that given time period. All right, so as an example, if you have $100,000 in sales in a month, over a total of 5,000 orders, then your average order value was $20, okay? This means it doesn't mean every customer. That means because you could have the same customer multiple times, right? It means for every order that you had, an average of $20 was spent, okay? Now that's a great number because from that number alone, you can determine if there's room to grow in your store with funnels or upsells, cross-sells, right? Because what you want to be able to do in any e-commerce business is increase the average order value, right? Increase the amount of money that you're making every time there's an order on your store. But that's not really the entire look, okay? Because your average order value is only giving you gross revenue. It's not giving you your profit. So to get a real look at your business, you would also need to add in your marketing cost, which is your customer acquisition, right? And your cost of goods sold, okay? So and we're just using random example numbers here to make this easy to understand. So let's say to generate that revenue, right? You did $100,000 in sales in a month. That was your revenue. Okay, to generate that, it cost you $30,000 in marketing. Okay, that was your marketing cost, and so that means your customer acquisition is $6 per customer, right? If you have $30,000 in spend to get 5,000 orders, that means your customer acquisition is $6 per customer. And then let's say your total cost of goods sold for the month was $40,000. So over that 5,000 orders, that means your average cost of goods sold per order was $8. Okay? So now again, I apologize for this. These numbers should actually be, all right, that's what it really should be. This number customer should be order. Okay. So that's more accurate. All right, so basically what this means is we're looking at the profit margin, right? So we know that our average order value is $20, but now that we figured out that our average customer acquisition cost per order was $6 and our average cost of goods per order was $8, we take those and subtract from our total gross, and we see that we're getting a $6 profit per every order, right? Why is that important? Because that lets you know like the health of your business, right? You need to know how much, because a lot of times I created an example here where the numbers work out favorably, right? But a lot of times there are businesses that are out there operating that have no idea. They're just looking at their average order value and they're thinking, okay, I have this number and it seems decent, and they're not taking out their marketing cost and their cost of goods sold. And if they do, then you realize you're making actually a lot less money. In some cases, these businesses are not even making money, right? So you need to understand this, because if your number here, the profit per every order, is not actually really making any money, then you clearly have a problem where you need to either increase your average order value, which would probably be the number one solution. Increase your average order value, right? So this number goes up, or decrease these two numbers somehow. One or both of these numbers have to decrease to increase your profit per order. Now let's look at customer lifetime value, okay, which is the long term, right? Average order value is on when the order happens, and customer lifetime value is on the farther, okay? So customer lifetime value is your average transaction plus the annual purchase frequency plus the expected years of relationship. Now, this is a little bit more difficult when you're a brand new business because you don't have some of this data here. But this is what your customer lifetime value is based off of. Okay, and it doesn't need to be expected years. It could be expected months, right? This could be expected months, like you might have to shorten your window. But let's look at an example to kind of understand why a customer lifetime value is important, okay? So here's two examples of a timeline where in the first timeline, you have a customer that buys very regularly. So there's this thing called a churn rate. A churn rate is basically how quickly or at what rate a person drops off. Okay, so in example number one, you see that her orders are much more even and spread. So it equals a higher customer lifetime value because the churn rate is lower. She's actually sticking with the brand over a longer period of time, which is more valuable because it predicts that she will continue the purchase in the future, as opposed to this person that bought a lot up front. And in this situation here, right, they bought a lot up front, but then they're likely to have churned. So it's a lower customer lifetime value, okay? Ultimately, this matters because while in this short-term graph, it may look like this is not much different, companies like Amazon have won based on understanding this long-term graph, right? Companies like Amazon, they operated in the red for years and weren't profitable for the first, it's something crazy, like the first 10, 15, maybe even 20 years of operation. They weren't even really profitable, but they understood this lifetime value that eventually would bring them into mega profits, right? Like now they're doing, $11 billion in profit a year or something like that. So that's the power of understanding a lifetime value. Now, it's basically taking your business out further, okay? And looking at a way that you can kind of figure this out is you can take your average order value, okay, and multiply that by the average purchase frequency, all right? Your purchase frequency is a number that equals total orders divided by total unique customers. Okay, so in this example of that 5,000 orders we talked about, that 5,000 orders may not be 5,000 unique customers. In fact, in this example, we're going to say that 5,000 orders is 4,000 unique customers. So that's a purchase frequency of 1.25 because it means 1,000 customers actually came back and purchased a second time. All right, so the purchase frequency is 1.25. All right. So now to get a short-term LTV, right? This is like in the short term while you're just trying to figure out, how you can kind of look at the value of a customer in not just the initial purchase, right? But over the course of like a month or two. You have your average order value here, $20 purchase frequency. It means your average customer is worth $25 to you, okay? Because we took it by unique customers here. So your average customer is worth $25 to you. And your average order value here, $6 times, this is your profit, right? $6 profit we talked about, times the purchase frequency is a profit long lifetime value of $7.50. Now, okay, I know this is not 100% like the exact definition of customer lifetime value, but the difference here and why I'm doing it like this is a simple way to calculate a short-term lifetime value, all right? And I'm using small numbers, but it's a short term, okay? Because this is 1 month, right? So we see that this is the purchase frequency over the course of a month to figure out that lifetime value. So then if you have you can extrapolate based on how many months you expect these customers to stick with you once you have some data, right? So if you expect a customer to stick with you for 3 months, then you could multiply this by 3, and now your lifetime value that you're looking at per customer is $75, okay? Based on your average order value, the purchase frequency, and then the expected amount of time that they're going to stay with you, all right? Now, understanding these numbers is all about scaling and growing your business efficiently, okay? So, point is, of course, that you always want to be trying to maximize the average order value and the lifetime value once you start getting consistent sales. All right, and we're talking about this because if you don't know this now, you're going to end up leaving money on the table. And we're going to look at specific business growth strategies in the last lesson. But basically, your average order value is about increasing the amount of money somebody is spending during the purchase. Okay, so that's like having an after purchase upsell, and then the lifetime value is about increasing the frequency that somebody is purchasing from you. And together, these are two of the best ways that you can scale a business, and we'll look at them a little bit more closely in the next lesson. Here's a famous quote from Jeff Bezos: "Your margin is my opportunity." Okay, and that's why I mentioned Amazon earlier. Amazon is probably the most famous instance of or case study of a company that started very small, right? Amazon started with just one person. You can look up early interviews from Jeff Bezos when he had this idea and he was a nobody, and his idea caught a lot of attention early on, but he started just one person that nobody knew, trying this idea, delivering packages on his own, and he had this vision from the very start, this long-term vision, understanding margin and the game of lifetime value. So he knew that by playing to the long term, increasing the lifetime value over a really long period of time of keeping people on his platform and buying and buying and buying again, it allowed his company to operate in the red. It allowed Amazon to spend more and be unprofitable in the very large development years of their company, and finally understanding that at a certain point that profitability would catch up, because now they were able to understand how much they could spend to acquire customers and win those customers and keep those customers, right? That's why it's so powerful, because the business that understands their margin, the business that can spend the most to acquire a customer, always wins. Managing your numbers to scale, okay? Scaling your e-commerce business is heavily dependent on cash flow. That's why they say cash is king. You can only scale to the amount of available cash flow you have. All right, I'm not including credit into this because I'm not somebody that's gonna, like, credit can be very, very powerful, right? But I'm just talking about cash flow right now because that's where most people start, and you may not have credit opportunities available to you. If you do, then that's fantastic, and that's something that you can also use in scaling your business as well. But we're not going to look at, like, credit cards and getting credit cards and points and travel rewards and all that stuff, right? That's just a bonus that when you start making money, you'll be able to get credit cards to use them in your scaling. But more importantly, people always talk about how much money should I be putting back into my business. And I want to just talk about this for a minute here, okay? And the idea of putting money back into your business, first of all, is completely dependent on your lifestyle, right? Now, as a general rule, you should be trying to live as cheap as possible while you're growing and scaling your business, okay? That's just how it is. You know, you can't have it's going to take you so much longer if you're pulling your money out of the business. Okay. Now, the one thing, you know, we get asked, this question gets asked in the group all the time. All right. I can only answer it from the perspective of my life. Okay. And I was able to just push everything back into the business because I wasn't completely dependent on the business income. I believe that's where you should try to be. In the beginning, when you're getting started out, you should be trying to build this with some sort of income that you already have because it's really difficult. And I know this from experience because when I first got started as an entrepreneur, before this whole Shopify deal and ecom empires started back many, many years ago, I quit my job and I went all in, and I didn't really understand the idea. Nobody was there to warn me and tell me, like, you know, you need to be able to provide for yourself. You want to have an income. You know, a lot of people that are hopeful entrepreneurs want to get out of the job world as quickly as possible because it's like this pride thing that they don't want to be working. They want to be working on their business, which is fantastic. But I actually just had somebody ask me this the other day, and I said, don't. He came to me and he said, you know, I quit my job and I need to make something work in a month. I have a daughter, and if I don't make it work, I have to go back to my job. I said, go back to your job, man. You know, like there's nothing wrong with having a job because the only time that it's wrong is if you feel trapped, if you feel like you're in a prison. But you're not in a prison. If you're working a job and then on, you know, in the mornings or in the evenings, you are working on your business, you're basically funding your business with a job. Your job is basically paying you to build a business. Now, I know what that's like. It's still not fun, right? Like you're still in a rush and an anticipation to want to get out of that job, just because you want the freedom. And I get that. I went through that in the beginning too, but you can't, it's going to be nearly impossible for you to build a business if you're worried and stressed every single day about how you're just going to eat the next day. Trust me, I've been there, okay? I've been there, and it's nearly impossible to focus on anything else. It's not the type of environment. All right, now moving into cash is king, you should be trying to put as much of your business right back into the business, or as much of your profits right back into the business, right? That way you're building up cash flow. You're building up cash reserve because your business isn't going to operate in the same exact consistency every single month. So what are you going to do when you have a bad month? You should be trying to save at least 3 months of operating costs and marketing costs into your business, right? That is having a good cash reserve of being able to run your business even if everything falls down 1 month or 2 months in a row, okay? So it's a completely personal and dependent question, but when you're getting started, you need to definitely be like putting as much as you can right back into it, okay? Tony Robbins has a fantastic quote. Any pilot can fly in great weather. It's during a storm when the instruments are going haywire that real pilots need to rely on skill and instinct to get them through. Finances in your business is the same way, all right? Anyone can fly well when things are fantastic. Anybody looks rich when they're, you know, they got money and nobody's challenging them and their business is going well. But it's when things are down that you really need to understand your finances. It's when your campaigns aren't working. It's when you just overspent on marketing and you realize that your profits are barely there, or you're in the red, or you lost money this month, right? Like that's the times that you need to understand your finances, and that's also the times that you want to have been preparing and been smart and been understanding that there is going to be ups and downs in your business, all right? Okay, so one of the things that you need to think about, and this diagram does a great way of explaining this, is thinking about the money coming into your business and the money going out of your business, and asking your question, is your business leaking anywhere? So basically, most of us are going to be operating here, right? We have our startup capital that we're putting into the business ourselves. That's whatever your startup cash is. That's whatever your marketing budget that you have that you're putting into the business, okay? Most of us are not operating with investors, and I would actually be very cautious of taking an investor anyway, because taking an investor usually requires equity. Equity is very expensive, all right? When you start giving up equity, that could equal so much more in the long run. So in my opinion, it's better to bootstrap a business than to take investor. It's better to get a job, live under your means in a, as cheap as possible, and save as much as you can as your startup cash. Have a part-time job that's giving you an income, so you have capital coming into the business while you're trying to get started. And then once you start making sales, of course, right, that's your profits, okay? So once you start making sales, your profits are going to be siphoned right back into the business, and you want to be trying to bring as much as possible from your profits right back into the business, because that's what's feeding your business to continue growing and scaling. When I was getting started and I was starting with e-commerce, right, I started with, my mental budget that I had was $2,000. That was my startup capital, right? Okay, so that was right here. There was no investor, and I started advertising, and I probably spent right around $500 before I started to find a successful product and market that. And I only scaled to the rate that I could actually scale, right? Because at first I didn't really have capital to keep putting in, but you have this bucket here, right? As you start making sales, you're going to start collecting some money in here, and then that profit is going to get distributed back into your business, okay? Shopify is going to start giving you payouts right back into your bank account. That bank account is going to feed right back into your Facebook ads, and so on and so forth. And so it's a compounding effect. As long as you're making profit, you are keeping that original, you're growing that original capital you had. That original $2,000 is still here, and I'm constantly adding money every single month. That raises my cash flow to be able to spend more money every single month. And as long as I'm spending it profitably, I'm starting to flip that money over and over. Okay, that's kind of how you get started in this game with e-commerce. All right, and you scale unless you have credit, right? But for me, I didn't really have credit available, so I was scaling based on my cash flow. Okay, that's what your business is represented here. Now, what you need to be careful about are the leaks that you might have: expenses, bills, wages. This could be things like, expenses can be so many things, okay? And they may not even be necessary expenses. You'll see people spending money on graphics. You'll see people spending money on courses, people spending money on softwares, people spending money on push button, guaranteed magic traffic solutions, right? People spending money on consultants. There's stuff that is good and there's stuff that's bad, but you need to be careful of the expenses that are leaking out of your business and making sure you are keeping as much as you can in here. Your bills could be leaking out. If you're spending too much in bills and you're not being careful of the overall amounts of bills that you are paying every single month, and wages as well, right? If you're overpaying on work that you're getting done, I mean, it's important to have people on your team, but you also want to make sure that in the beginning, the money that you're spending is going directly into operations that help the business either make more money or keep the money that you have, right? So customer service helps you keep the money, and advertising helps you make more money, okay? So this is just meant to get you thinking about the different facets of your business. You need to be thinking about the cash flow that's coming in. You need to be thinking and aware of any leaks that might be stifling your growth because you're leaking too much money out. And then you need to be thinking about where your net profit margin is and how much of that you're feeding back into the business to be able to keep scaling. Like I said, most of us are only operating from profits as we get started, so which is one source in and many leaks out. So you want to be strict about making sure you're reinvesting as much profits as possible, bootstrapping everything as long as possible, and only investing in resources to help you make money or keep money, okay? Here's an example profit loss sheet. This is an old one from back when I first got started, but I want to show you how simple it can be, right? This was one of my first six-figure months, and this is how I kept it, okay? This is nothing fancy, but it works, and it's completely exactly everything that I need to know. Over here, I was pulling all of my AliExpress purchases into a sheet, and then I was using the sum feature to add up the total. This is my cost of goods sold, right? My total cost of goods sold for the month. Over here, I'm pulling from my Shopify reports to break down my gross profit, okay? Because here I have order count, and then I have revenue generated by those order counts. Then I take out my fees for each one, right? My PayPal fees, my Shopify fees. So the fees come out, refunds come out, and then you're left with your gross profit, right? Gross profit is my revenue after fees and refunds. And then I transfer my cost of goods sold here, my cost of marketing here, and any overhead you have, okay, that's what was represented here. So I was able to come up with the number of my net profit, which was 39,000, or a profit margin of 39%. Now, it wasn't always like this, right? This was a good month. My profit margin wasn't always at 39%, but it is certainly possible based on most of that. Like, your cost of goods is kind of more of a fixed cost, where your cost of marketing could fluctuate a lot, right? This was a really good month on cost of marketing for me. I had almost a 5 times return on my ad spend, okay? And then here's a sample P&L, profit loss statement, okay? Which basically takes your, again, same concept, right? Takes your total revenue. It's just a different way of formatting it, but at the end of the day, you're getting the same. At the end of the day, you're getting the same numbers. Okay, so it takes your total revenue minus cost of goods sold to get a gross profit margin, and then you're taking out all of your expenses, which is where they would also include marketing expenses here, advertising, right? That's the advertising expense, and then all the other expenses as well, to get your net profit margin. Okay, so these are important things to know. You need to know your numbers. You need to be keeping track of everything, right? Profit margin is what matters. You need to be monitoring all. See, remember when we talked about these leaks, right? These expenses and bills. That's why I wanted to show you this example profit loss statement here. All these different things. Now, this is an example for an actual like physical location business. As you can see, they have rent and all these other things, vehicle operating costs. So yours could be very different, but the point of why I showed you this is to be considering all of your fees, okay? Everything that you're paying, printing and stationery, postage, like all these things that are adding up to take money and leak money out of your business, okay? You want to be keeping track. Revenue does not matter. Revenue is a vanity metric. It means very little, like to say that you did $1 million in revenue, but you only profited 85,000. I mean, sure, okay, look, I'm not, if that's what you're doing, I'm not going to say that that's bad, but that's only an 8.6% profit margin. That is bad. I mean, at the end of the day, compared to $1 million, only getting to keep 8.6 of your money is really not good. But I mean, obviously, at least you're still making a full-time income. But there's so many things here that you could probably look at, especially in the wages and salaries department here, to try, and especially in some of these areas, to try and bring that profit margin up. Right? You want to be considering everything, all the leaks in your business, all the numbers that go into it. Don't get hung up on just looking at revenue. Understand your average order value, your lifetime value, understand your finances across the entire business, and be smart about your money and where you're putting it and how you're keeping track of it. All right, so that's everything for this lesson. And in the next one, we're going to take the average order value and the lifetime value, and we're going to put that into the lesson of some business growth strategies for how to grow your business.